Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friday Facebook Live. This is Tiara International. And today we have myself, Betsy Sobiak, along with my colleague and business partner. And I feel like you're so much more than that. Like, I just wanted to keep going and friend and coach and guide. I was like, wait a minute. I have so many things I could say about you. Elizabeth Rusky. And you're not in Chicago today. I don't know.
I'm traveling on business. Yeah. I'm in the States, but.
Yeah. So it's great to be connected with you. And as you guys watching know, every Friday around this time, we do a Facebook Live on a leadership topic that's come up either for ourselves as a leadership development company or for the people that we work with. And today's topic is one that's a little tough for me, actually. It's what happens when your best isn't enough. Like, say you have a goal, you have an intention, you have a dream, and you really do give it your all. You put your heart into it. You've tried everything. As we used to say when I played volleyball, you left it all on the court. There was nothing you didn't leave on the court. And you don't get the result that you want. Like, it just doesn't happen for you. And when you are someone committed to leading your life and continuing to grow and learn and not become weighted down and heavy or pessimistic, like, what do you do in that scenario? So this is the kind of thing that we talk about on Fridays. You can follow us on our Facebook page. We have a Tiara International Facebook page, as well as a YouTube channel where you can get these videos on a regular basis. So Beth, I'm going to have you start, because even as we were pre-talking about this, I was like, man, it sucks when that happens. Like, it's just not, like, for me, I still hold on to this like kind of odd logic formula that if someone really did their best, gave it their all, and it was something they really wanted from their heart, like it quote unquote should work out for them in some way. But yeah, I know, and I've witnessed a lot of times where it doesn't, whether it's a business that someone has tried to start that didn't get off the ground, or they tried to start a family that couldn't, or a relationship that ended not the way they imagined, or something that happened with your kids. I mean, there's so many things outside your control, and there's also so many things that you can just put your heart and soul into and really do your best, and it doesn't go your way. And I just hate it when that happens. I wish it didn't. So start us off. Like, what do we do when that happens?
So now that Betsy set herself up as not an expert.
Yeah, help me with this one.
What I love about these conversations is that these are questions that every human being faces sometime. It's like, man, I really worked my butt off on that. It didn't turn out. That's like the enlightened version. The other side is where you went and went, man, this sucks. Like, what? Right? And there's a whole bunch in between, and even probably more extreme than that. But I think a couple things. One is that, first of all, there's no guarantee that we're going to get what we want in life. And I know that sounds a little fatalistic or pessimistic, but like, there really isn't a guarantee. There's what we do have though is hope. And, that we can actually influence things, and we can't control everything, but we can influence them. And I think having both of you and I played sports all of our lives, and I think we've experienced that, where you've really worked hard, you really did everything you could on the court, you did it as a team, you got really far in the playoffs, and then you lost, and then it was over. And what do you do about that? So I think, for some of us, sports is a good analogy, because it really does kind of put things in context about, oh, well, I can understand that. But it happens in life, it happens in business. Things come along and knock you off, even though you've had a good plan. And I think the first thing, that comes to mind for me is that you have to allow disappointment. Like, you really have to allow yourself to feel that, oh man, this does suck. Like, I really wanted that.
And I think it could be a lot of different emotions for that. So there's disappointment, there's heartbreak, there's anger, there's resentment, there's irritation, there's envy. I mean, there's a lot of things when you really go for something and it fails, or it's disappointing, or you don't get to where you want to go. and it could linger for a while. So I do think you have to allow that full spectrum of feelings, and you could feel depressed for a while. You could feel unmotivated. Now you don't want to get like stuck there or have it define you as like a absolute paradigm about not being able to have a success or no possibility, but you still want to be able to allow and accept the disappointment in whatever flavor is showing up for you.
And I think that's an important, these two words are very close, allow and wallow.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're very, very close. Actually, only one letter off, but you can decide, how much allowance you really need to allow. Somebody might prod you and be like, hey, is this enough? Can you move on now? But only you can decide that.
Yeah.
And I think, allowing for yourself the space so that you do all of those, it's almost like the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah,
you have to go through everything in order to then be at a place of acceptance.
And even when you're at that place of acceptance, like a huge disappointment is sort of with you. So there's also a thing when you look at it from the grief point of view, where it's not like you just move on and then you're totally the same person as you were before. You move ahead with the disappointment or the heartbreak or the failure. So it's like you don't want to wallow or get stuck or be defined by it. Yeah, it does change you. It does either make you stronger or teach you a lesson, or it impacts kind of like the fabric of your life and the plot of your story. So you want to go easy on yourself too, to be like, yes, I am allowing it. Yes, I'm going to move on and still focus on what direction I want to go from here. Yes, I'm going to still know that I can have an influence and an impact and design the next chapter of my life. But it's okay if you bring forward just a little bit of a taste of that heartbreak or a lesson that you've learned or a piece of wisdom. Like you're changed by it in some way. You don't want to be so hard on yourself. Like you have to just like bounce back or get over it or move on. You can just like bring it forward with you in a very generous way.
I think it makes you wiser if you do. I think if you don't, I don't know, there's some lessons. You and I have been, really candid with each other about different challenges in our lives, there's patterns that, you just look and you're like, why can't I crack this pattern? I feel like I'm doing everything I can. Maybe are, maybe aren't. But, when the situation is a little bit more clearly defined, like a relationship, like a business result, like an accomplishment or something that you're going after, I think if you can just really be in the space of what, not just the lessons, but what do I take from this? As a parent with my sons, a lot of times I think the hardest thing is watching someone else's heartbreak. Deal with your own is one thing, but somebody you love having their heart broken is like,
yeah.
But, really allowing that space for them to feel it, but then encourage them to say, what is it about this that you can take with you? Because I think that's where the wisdom, and the learning in life comes. Any situation, there's something good, there's something to avoid, there's something that, meant something to you. There's a lot to be taken from anything.
Well, and what you just said too is I think that a lot of times we do treat other people better when we're their support system than we treat ourselves. So that's also just a metaphor to use for yourself. So if you're going through a time that feels really tough, if you feel guilty about it, ashamed, or just in a bad spot, how would you treat a friend during that? How would you talk to them? How would you support them? And to treat yourself in the same way, I think is important guidance as well. So that we're not harder on ourselves or feel like we have to put on a happy face or something like that when we're really going through a thing. Yeah, at the very beginning, you said something that I think is important. Like, on one hand, there are no guarantees, and there's so many circumstances that we face in our lives and our world that we really don't control. And we do have to be willing to navigate those. At the same time, we always want to realize that we do have some choice about where we take it from here and what we do next and how we regroup and how we heal or move on or learn or set the next goal or whatever the things are. So there's this both and, I think, of disappointment which is knowing like, okay, well, I couldn't control all of that and I really did do my best and there's nothing more I could have done. And now what's the next chapter? So that both and of like, yes, I can't control all circumstances without being victim-y, and then being able to still be hopeful without carrying so much resentment or disappointment or sadness with you that you just feel like you can't even think of a next step. So both of the things, those things together, I think can be a little bit tricky, just the balance of them.
I do think they're tricky, Betsy. I think the word that comes to mind as I'm listening to you describe that is maturity. And I don't mean like, you have to go through a lot in life to be mature. I just mean the maturity to actually recognize that there's good and bad in both situations. There's things in this that I can control. There's awful that I can't. That doesn't allow me to be a victim.
Yeah.
I still have to choose to be empowered and powerful in my life. So, the maturity to have a dream and still the resilience to go after it. Like, there's a lot of times in our leadership work, people ask us, on teams, and they ask us individually with the leadership coaching, they say, how do you teach resilience?
Mm-hmm.
And resilience is one of those things where, people experience, it's interesting that you can see over time, and we all have people in our lives where we're like, my God, things just fall into place for them. Like, I don't think they work hard, and they've never had a setback, and the thing is, when they do have a setback, I hope they're able to have learned along the way, but some people will and some people won't. And I'm not in charge of their path. I'm only in charge of my own. So, right. Sometimes if I'm hard-headed, I might have to learn that lesson a couple different ways. Sometimes if I'm more present and saying, oh, okay, I should have seen those signs. I didn't. So I think resilience is about like, I think it ties to how committed you are to what you really want. And I don't mean like kill yourself committed, but like how critical is it,
Right. There's so much in this. Like, I also feel like one thing is trusting that you did do your best. So if you start kind of at the very beginning, if you're like, okay, I'm going to go for this thing, whether it's a business goal, a career goal, a family goal, a personal goal. And then when you do really give it your all, like there are times I can remember literally like on the volleyball court, you give it your all and you'll lose the game. And there are those times where it is heartbreaking, but at least I gave it my all. At least there's nothing I could have done differently. I did everything that I knew to do. And then you can move on and play the next game or something. So there is something about like, are you really giving it your all? And if you have, you can be proud of how you played the game no matter what. And then if you still fall short and come up with a loss or a heartbreak or a big failure or disappointment, then it comes into play with what you're talking about. Like, how do you allow all of the experience? How do you build resiliency so you're learning from it? How do you choose if you're going to recommit to the goal and dig back in, or if you're going to let it go? I mean, you were with me at a pivotal point when I had to let go of playing volleyball really because of my knee issues and having like hurt my knees multiple times. And after a doctor's appointment, I was like, because even as a grown up in Chicago, like I loved playing beach volleyball and intramural volleyball. And again, it's just a sports metaphor, so it's not as important as some of our life goals, but I had kind of an identity, in that. And so there was a point where I had to be like, well, I'm just not going to I have to let that go at this point, at least for a chapter or something like that. And that can be hard to know, like, okay, am I going to recommit to the goal and learn a lesson and dig back in? Or am I going to let this go and invent a new chapter for my life in this area? And I think that's part of the resilience is learning and then being able to tune in and make that choice based on what you know to be true for you, not based on what you think other people expect or what other people would want you to do.
Yeah, there's also something very interesting in this phrase, do my best. Like I know I did my best. That's kind of like, what does that mean? What does, we each have to define that. And the funny thing is, doing my best today could look very different from doing my best in any other moment.
Right.
And so that is, nobody can judge you about that except you.
Right.
So I have to know I actually did my best. And I know we've talked about this on other, recordings, is that one of my favorite things in the last 12 months was the aha that I'm actually doing the best I can, because if I knew to do something different, I'd do it.
Right. Right.
Now, that's not permission to not do new things or try new things. But, I think we also have to be very clear about when you're saying you're doing your best, what does that mean to you? And only you can be the judge of that.
Yeah.
And if you're a really hard grader and you're hearing this recording, you got to lighten up and be more compassionate. Right. And if you're a real loose grader, then you might need to tighten things a little bit. I mean, but only you can judge.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I just want to say is that, when you do recommit, there's two things that I think are really important. One is you have to believe it's possible. Like there's some areas where I think I'm stuck, where I don't even think it's possible. I can think back to, it was, I think 7 or 8 years ago when I lost a lot of weight. I lost I think it was over 50 pounds. I was walking around for a good 10 years, not thinking it was possible to lose the weight. I had to get my head around it's possible.
Right.
Now, since then, I've probably gained and lost 15, 20 pounds here, there, whatever, but I know it's possible. And I can really believe that.
Yeah.
And I think the second thing is keeping your eyes on the prize.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you really are committed to?
Yeah. Going toward it. I know a long time ago now, I took motorcycle lessons. Remember when I did that?
I do.
And like the first rule of riding a motorcycle and a bike too, I still ride a bicycle, is you want to look where you're going. So whether you're on a mountain bike or road bike or motorcycle, it's like you want to look at your line, and you don't want to look not in the other direction, and you'll go where you look, basically. So, and it's really a thing. So I think that a lot, like, okay, so keep your eye on where you want to go, choose your line, walk that path, give it your all, all that kind of stuff. And if you fall down, you regroup, for sure. But you take the time that you need to like get centered and grounded and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough topic because we know good people who lose jobs and have struggles in their families and lots of different kinds of things that happen. And it's not always a reflection on who you are and what you're up to and what your life is about. And so then it's how, when you have given your heart, how do you bounce back? And it's allowing yourself that space to move on, keeping your eye on the prize, knowing when to recommit, knowing when to let go. And really, it all also comes down to supporting yourself and being supported by others too.
I think I would say to people, if I were going to wrap up with one thing, is that your life is not summed up in one circumstance or one event. That's not your identity. That's not what the value of your life was. That's not your contribution to humanity. One event or one, circumstance. It's a lot. It's the cumulative effect of the impact that you've had in the world. So, it's one of those ways that helps me realize that this too shall pass. And I know that's a cliche, but it's one of those things. It's like, this is just a blip on the path.
I mean, a lot of great stories start with a pretty horrible disappointment or heartbreak in the first chapter, and they go on to be a magnificent work of art after that starting point. So in many ways, it's not an ending point, it's a starting point. So,
yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time and doing the Facebook Live today in your busy day. And we do these Fridays. Again, it's Tiara International Leadership Development Company. You can follow us on Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll be back next Friday.
All righty.
Thanks,
everybody.
Bye.